Doctor. Eleanor stood at the observation window, her breath fogging the reinforced glass as she watched the creature on the other side. It moved with an alien grace, 6 limbs working in perfect harmony as it explored its enclosure. The iridescent scales covering its body shimmered under the specialized lighting, designed to mimic the spectrum of its home star, a star that had died over 50,000 years ago. "It's beautiful," she whispered, more to herself than to Dr. Kareem beside her. "Beautiful and dangerous," he replied, tapping notes into his tablet. "We still don't know what we have created here, Ellie." Eleanor turned to face her colleague, the man who had been warning her against this project since its inception 5 years earlier. "We haven't created anything, Naveed. We have restored something. There's a difference." "Is there?" His dark eyes met hers. "The Vassari are extinct for a reason. Perhaps they should have stayed that way." She returned her gaze to the creature. "No, not creature," she corrected herself, to the juvenile Vassari. "The first of its kind to draw breath in millennia. Her life's work incarnate. Everything goes extinct for a reason," she said softly. "That doesn't mean it's the right outcome." The discovery of the Vassari had been a historical accident. 30 years ago, when humanity was still taking its first tentative steps into interstellar exploration, the survey vessel Horizon had detected unusual energy signatures emanating from a seemingly uninhabited planet orbiting a dying red dwarf star in the Cetus constellation. The planet, later designated Cetus 7b, showed no signs of life but bore the unmistakable scars of advanced civilization. The subsequent archaeological expedition uncovered the remains of a species unlike any encountered before, a race of hexapodal beings with an internal skeletal structure composed of a carbon-silicon hybrid material that had preserved remarkably well. The expedition also discovered vast data archives, partially intact. Despite the millennia that had passed since their creation, it took 15 years for Earth's xenolinguists to decode enough of the Vassari language to access those archives. And when they did, the story they uncovered was heartbreaking. The Vassari had been an advanced civilization, masters of genetic manipulation and quantum computing. They had achieved spaceflight thousands of years before humans had even developed agriculture. But they had never expanded beyond their home system. Instead, they had turned their technological prowess inward, reshaping their world and themselves to create a perfect society. For tens of thousands of years, they had lived in harmony with their environment, their technology so advanced it was indistinguishable from a natural world. And then their star had begun to die, earlier than their scientists had predicted. With no colonies to flee to and their genetic adaptations specialized for their homeworld, the Vassari faced extinction. Their final archives documented their collective decision. Rather than struggle against the inevitable, they would pass peacefully into oblivion, preserving their knowledge in the hope that someday another species might find it and learn from their mistakes. That IT was this archive that had captivated Eleanor as a graduate student. While others saw the Vassari as a cautionary tale about the dangers of technological complacency, she saw a species of incredible beauty and wisdom that deserved a second chance. Their genetic science, in particular, had been centuries beyond Earth's current capabilities. If she could decode it, humanity might leap forward in medical technology, potentially curing countless diseases. At least, that was how she had justified the project to the United Earth Science Directorate. Her personal motivations ran deeper. "Director Chun is on her way down," Dr. Kareem said, breaking into Eleanor's thoughts. "The UND Security Council is meeting this afternoon to discuss the project." Eleanor nodded, unsurprised. The resurrection of the Vassari had been controversial from the start. While many viewed it as a scientific triumph, others, particularly religious groups and bioethicists, had decried it as dangerous overreach. "Playing God," they called it. "And what will you tell them?" she asked, watching as the young Vassari manipulated a puzzle box they had placed in its enclosure. Its nimble appendages worked with deliberate precision, solving in minutes what would challenge most human children for hours. "The truth," Kareem replied. that we have successfully resurrected a juvenile specimen of an extinct alien species using reconstructed genetic material, that the specimen displays remarkable intelligence and problem-solving abilities, and that we have no idea what it will grow into or whether it will pose a threat to humanity. Eleanor bristled. The Vassari were peaceful. Their entire civilization existed without a single recorded war. According to their own archives, Kareem pointed out. And even if that's true, this isn't a pure Vassari. We had to fill gaps in the genetic code with synthesized sequences. We don't know how those alterations might affect its development or behavior. Before Eleanor could respond, the security door hissed open behind them, admitting Director Sophia Chun. The director was a small woman with a commanding presence, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in a severe bun. Her expression as she approached the observation window was unreadable. Dr. Webb, Dr. Kareem. She nodded to each of them in turn. I see our guest is awake. It's been exploring its environment for the past 2 hours, Eleanor said. Its cognitive functions appear to be developing normally, ahead of schedule, actually. Director Chun studied the Vassari for a long moment. And you are certain it can't escape? The enclosure is secure, Kareem assured her. Triple-layered reinforced polymer walls, electromagnetic containment field, and atmospheric controls that can render it unconscious within seconds if necessary. Good. Chen's gaze remained fixed on the alien. Because after today's council meeting, security is likely to become our top priority. Eleanor felt her stomach tighten. What have you heard? Nothing concrete, Chen replied. But the political winds are shifting. The European Consortium has expressed concerns about potential pathogenic risks. The Pacific Alliance is worried about technological destabilization if the Vassari's knowledge falls into the wrong hands. And the African Union has raised questions about the ethical implications of resurrecting an extinct species without consent. They consented, Eleanor said, perhaps too quickly. The archives explicitly state their hope that their knowledge would benefit future civilizations. Sharing knowledge is one thing, Chen said. Being brought back from extinction is quite another. She turned to face Eleanor directly. I need to know exactly what this creature is capable of, Dr. Webb. Not your hopes or your theories. Facts. Eleanor took a deep breath. The juvenile Vassari possesses approximately the cognitive capacity of a human 10-year-old, though its problem-solving abilities are more advanced in certain areas, particularly spatial reasoning and pattern recognition. Its physical capabilities include enhanced strength relative to its size, roughly twice that of a comparable human, and significantly better fine motor control due to its hexapital structure. And when it matures, based on our models, Eleanor hesitated. Its intelligence will likely exceed human norms by a considerable margin. Vassari adults were capable of parallel processing multiple complex problems simultaneously, something our brains simply aren't wired for. I see. Chen's expression remained neutral, but Eleanor could sense her concern. And how long until it reaches maturity? In their natural environment, Vassari took approximately 15 Earth years to reach full maturity, Kareem interjected. However, given the accelerated growth patterns we have observed, our specimen may reach equivalent development in as little as 7 years. Chen nodded slowly. 7 years. That's not much time to determine whether we have made a massive mistake. She turned back to the window, where the Vassari had finished with the puzzle box and was now examining its reflection in the observation glass. Could it see them watching? Eleanor wasn't sure. The Security Council will want restrictions, Chun continued. Possibly a complete suspension of the project, pending further review. Eleanor felt panic rising in her chest. Director, we can't suspend now. The developmental window is critical. If we interfere with its growth cycle, I understand your concerns, Dr. Webb. Chun cut her off. But the decision may not be mine to make. The best I can do is ensure you have an opportunity to make your case directly to the council. Eleanor nodded, recognizing the olive branch being extended. Thank you, Director. As Chun turned to leave, the Vassari approached the glass directly. It raised one of its upper limbs, pressing what approximated a hand against the transparent barrier. Its multifaceted eyes, golden with vertical pupils, seemed to focus directly on Eleanor. "It recognizes you," Chun observed. "Yes," Eleanor confirmed. "It has since the third day after awakening." The director studied the interaction for a moment longer. "Be careful with attachment, Dr. Webb, for both your sakes." With that warning, she departed, leaving Eleanor and Kareem alone with their creation once more. Eleanor approached the glass, placing her palm against it, mirroring the Vassari's gesture. The creature's eyes tracked her movement, and its mouth parts shifted in what she had come to recognize as an expression of curiosity. "What are you thinking?" she whispered. "What do you see when you look at us?" "Ellie." Kareem's voice held a note of caution. "I know," she said, not moving her hand, "but I can't help wondering. Are we its saviors or its jailers?" The Vassari tilted its head, then made a series of clicking sounds with its mouth parts, the first vocalization they had recorded. Eleanor felt her heart race. Was it trying to communicate? "Get the audio recording equipment," she said urgently to Kareem. "I think it's trying to speak." The United Nations Directorate Security Council convened in New Geneva, Switzerland, a gleaming city rebuilt after the climate wars as a symbol of international cooperation. Eleanor sat nervously at the presentation table, facing 16 of the most powerful individuals on Earth, representatives from each of the major political blocs that comprise the United Earth Government. Her presentation had been meticulously prepared. Comprehensive data on the Vassari's development, risk assessment protocols, potential scientific benefits, and ethical considerations. She had rehearsed for days, anticipating every possible question or objection. None of it had prepared her for the hostility she now faced. Dr. Webb, the representative from the European Consortium, was saying, "You have presented an impressive array of potential benefits from this project. Advanced medical applications, new materials science, quantum computing breakthroughs. But these remain theoretical, while the risks are immediate and potentially catastrophic." Eleanor maintained her composure. "With respect, Counselor, the risks are being managed through multiple redundant safety systems. The Vassari specimen is contained within a facility designed to withstand orbital bombardment. It is monitored continuously by AI systems with reaction times measured in microseconds. And as I have detailed in my report, its physiological vulnerabilities are well understood and exploitable if necessary. You speak of this being as though it were a laboratory rat," the African Union representative observed. "Yet, by your own admission, it possesses intelligence comparable to a human child, with the potential to far exceed human cognitive capabilities. Does this not raise profound ethical questions about its treatment?" Eleanor had anticipated this line of questioning. "It does, Counselor, which is why we have established an ethical framework for interaction with a specimen that acknowledges its sentience while prioritizing safety. As it develops, we plan to gradually expand its environment and autonomy in accordance with demonstrated behavioral stability. And if it proves unstable," this from the Pacific Alliance representative, a stern-faced woman whose skepticism was palpable, "then containment protocols will be maintained or enhanced as necessary." Eleanor replied, though the words felt hollow even as she spoke them. It was increasingly difficult to think of the Vassari as a mere specimen to be contained, especially after its attempt at communication the previous day. "Let us speak plainly," the North American Union representative interjected. He was an older man with a military bearing, his silver hair cropped short. "You have resurrected a member of a species with technological capabilities far beyond our own, a species that, by evolutionary necessity, will be driven to survive and propagate. What happens when it reaches maturity and demands the right to reproduce? To establish a new Vassari civilization?" The question hung in the air, unanswerable. Eleanor had considered this eventuality, of course, but had always pushed it to the periphery of her planning. One step at a time, she had told herself. First, prove resurrection is possible, then worry about the implications. Now, facing the council's collective scrutiny, that approach seemed dangerously naive. Counselor, she began carefully, the Vassari maturation process takes years. During that time, we will learn a great deal about its psychology, its values, and its intentions. We will establish communication protocols and cultural exchange. By the time reproduction becomes a relevant concern, we will have built a foundation of understanding that allows for reasoned discussion of such matters. A foundation built on captivity, the African representative noted, hardly conducive to trust. Eleanor felt her carefully constructed arguments crumbling. They were right, of course. She had been so focused on the scientific challenge of resurrection that she had never fully confronted the moral implications of success. Director Chun, sensing Eleanor's struggle, stepped in. Honorable counselors, while Dr. Webb's project raises complex ethical questions, it also represents a unique opportunity. The Vassari archives contain solutions to problems humanity has struggled with for generations: sustainable energy production, environmental remediation, disease prevention. With proper safeguards, the benefits could far outweigh the risks. The council members exchanged glances, their expressions varying from skepticism to outright opposition. Eleanor realized with sinking certainty that the decision had likely been made before she even entered the chamber. The council chair, a dignified woman from the Indian Subcontinent Coalition, spoke for the first time. Thank you for your presentation, Dr. Webb. The council will deliberate and render its decision by tomorrow. Until then, no changes are to be made to the containment protocols or research parameters. You are dismissed. Eleanor gathered her materials with numb fingers, her mind racing. She had one day to find a way to save her project. To save the Vassari AS, she and Director Chin exited the chamber. Eleanor's tablet chimed with an incoming message. It was from Kareem, marked urgent. * breakthrough in communication. The specimen is using modified sign language. You need to see this immediately. When Eleanor arrived back at the facility, she found Kareem in a state of barely contained excitement. He led her not to the observation room, but to a small conference area where a holographic display showed footage from the Vassari's enclosure. It started after you left, he explained, manipulating the controls to begin playback. The specimen had been watching educational materials we provided, basic human history, language primers, simple scientific concepts. Then it did this. In the recording, the Vassari moved to the communication panel they had installed in its enclosure, a simple touch interface with basic pictographic icons. It had been using the panel for weeks to indicate needs or preferences, but what Eleanor now witnessed was something entirely different. The Vassari was rapidly combining symbols and patterns that made no sense according to the interface's design. It would press sequences, wait, then try new combinations. It's trying to hack the system, Eleanor realized. Exactly, Kareem confirmed, fast-forwarding the footage. After approximately 2 hours, it apparently gave up on that approach and tried something new. The recording now showed the Vassari directly facing the observation window. It raised its upper limbs and began making deliberate gestures, movements that seemed vaguely familiar to Eleanor. Is that sign language? A modified version, Kareem nodded, adapted for its anatomy. It must have learned it from the educational materials. We had included a section on different human communication methods. What is it saying? Eleanor leaned closer to the display, trying to interpret the alien movements. At first, it was just repeating basic signs: hello, food, yes, no, testing whether we were watching and would respond. Kareem's expression grew more serious, but then it started conveying more complex concepts. Dr. Webb, it knows what it is. Eleanor felt a chill run down her spine. What do you mean? It signed Vassari. You human. We're others. Kareem met her gaze. It knows it's the only one of its kind. Eleanor sank into a chair, the implications washing over her. The Vassari was not just intelligent. It was self-aware and cognizant of its unique situation. And now it was asking questions they had never prepared to answer. "There's more," Kareem said quietly. When no one responded to its query, it signed something else. He adjusted the playback to show the most recent footage. The Vassari's movements were more deliberate now, its golden eyes fixed intently on the observation window as it signed. Asterisk, I help. You help. Together survive. Asterisk, my God, Eleanor whispered. It's proposing an alliance. Before Kareem could respond, an alarm blared throughout the facility. Red emergency lights began flashing, and a computerized voice announced, "Security breach detected. All personnel initiate lockdown procedures immediately." Eleanor exchanged a panicked look with Kareem before rushing to the nearest computer terminal. She entered her security credentials, pulling up the facility's status display. What she saw made her blood run cold. "Armed forces have entered the facility," she reported. "Military designation. United Earth Defense Force." "That's impossible," Kareem protested. "They can't intervene without council authorization, and the council hasn't even voted yet." Eleanor's mind raced. Unless they did vote, in a closed session after we left. She accessed the communication system. "Director Chun, are you there? What's happening?" There was no response. "We need to get to the Vassari," Eleanor decided, already moving toward the door. Kareem caught her arm. "Ellie, think about what you are doing. If the Defense Force is here, they have orders to secure the facility. That likely includes the specimen. We need to comply. And what do you think will happen to it once they have secured it?" Eleanor demanded. "Best case, it becomes a military research subject. Worst case." She couldn't finish the thought. "I'm not going to let that happen. What can you possibly do against armed military personnel?" Eleanor's expression hardened. "I'm not going to fight them. I'm going to give them what they are really after, the Vassari's knowledge." She pulled away from Kareem's grasp. "Help me or don't, but I'm going." After a moment's hesitation, Kareem nodded. "I will try to slow them down. Buy you some time." "Thank you," Eleanor said, squeezing his hand briefly before turning toward the containment sector. The emergency lighting cast everything in a crimson glow as Eleanor made her way through the facility's corridors, avoiding the main thoroughfares where she might encounter the incoming military forces. Her access badge still worked. At least they hadn't locked her out of the systems yet, allowing her to use service passages normally restricted to maintenance personnel. As she neared the containment area, she could hear the commotion of the military operation. Shouted orders, the heavy tread of armored boots, the electronic chirp of tactical communications. The observation room was mercifully empty when she arrived. Through the window, she could see the Vassari pressed against the far wall of its enclosure, its posture conveying what Eleanor interpreted as fear or agitation. Its head snapped toward the observation window as soon as she entered, those golden eyes focusing on her with unmistakable recognition. Eleanor moved quickly to the environmental control panel. Her hands flew across the interface, disabling the automated security protocols one by one. Under normal circumstances, this would have triggered multiple alarms, but in the current chaos, the system simply logged her overrides without escalating them to human attention. With the immediate safeguards disabled, Eleanor approached the intercom. For the first time since the Vassari's resurrection, she would speak directly to it rather than having her voice filtered and modified by the communication system. "I don't know if you can understand my speech," she said, "but we don't have much time." The Vassari straightened, moving closer to the observation window. It raised its upper limbs and began to sign. Asterisk, danger coming. I hear many. Asterisk, its movements were more fluid now, more confident. It had been practicing. Yes, Eleanor confirmed. They want to take you away. I don't know what they will do to you. Asterisk, why? Asterisk, such a simple question with such a complex answer. They are afraid, Eleanor said after a moment. Afraid of what you represent, of what you might become. The Vassari seemed to consider this, its head tilting in that now familiar gesture of contemplation. Asterisk, you afraid? Asterisk, Eleanor shook her head. No, I'm afraid for you, not of you. The Vassari's mouth parts shifted in what Eleanor had come to interpret as something akin to a smile. Asterisk, then help. Door open. Asterisk, it gestured toward the sealed entrance to its enclosure, a triple redundant airlock system designed to prevent any possibility of unauthorized exit. Eleanor hesitated. Opening the door would cross a line from which there was no return. It would be career suicide at best, treason at worst. But leaving the Vassari to military custody felt equally unconscionable. If I open the door, what will you do? She asked. The Vassari's response was immediate. Asterisk, find others. Asterisk, Eleanor's breath caught. There are no others. You're the only one we were able to resurrect. The alien's expression shifted, its body language conveying what seemed like sadness or resignation. Then it signed again. Asterisk, make others. Need help. Your help. Asterisk, before Eleanor could respond, the security door to the observation room hissed open. She turned to find herself facing 4 UEDF soldiers in full tactical gear, pulse rifles raised and aimed at her. Dr. Eleanor Webb, the lead soldier, announced, his face obscured by a polarized helmet visor. You are ordered to step away from the controls and submit to temporary detention pending security review. Eleanor raised her hand slowly. I'm unarmed. There's no need for weapons. Step away from the controls, Doctor, the soldier repeated, his rifle unwavering. Behind her, Eleanor heard a rapid tapping on the observation glass. She didn't need to turn to know the Vassari was trying to get her attention. I deserve to know what's happening, she said, taking a single step away from the control panel. The Security Council wasn't supposed to vote until tomorrow. Emergency powers were invoked after credible intelligence suggested the specimen posed an imminent threat, the soldier replied. Now, this is your final warning. Step away and submit to detention. What intelligence? Eleanor demanded, taking another small step away. The Vassari has shown no aggressive tendencies whatsoever. That's classified information, ma'am. Eleanor's mind raced. There was no intelligence. There couldn't be. The decision had been political, not evidence-based. Fear had won out over science, as it had so many times throughout human history. The tapping behind her grew more insistent. Against her better judgment, Eleanor glanced back. The Vassari was signing rapidly. Asterisk, trust me. Help me help you. Asterisk, in that moment, Eleanor made her decision. She had spent her entire career studying the Vassari, learning about their peaceful civilization, their harmonious existence. If humanity rejected that knowledge out of fear, perhaps it didn't deserve to have it. With deliberate movements, she reached for the control panel. Final warning, Doctor, the soldier shouted. Eleanor's fingers found the emergency release sequence. Sometimes you have to take a leap of faith, she said, and pressed the confirmation button. Multiple things happened simultaneously. The soldiers surged forward, the containment field around the Vassari's enclosure disengaged with an audible hum, and the airlock mechanisms began their opening sequence. Eleanor felt hands grabbing her, pulling her away from the controls. She didn't resist. Her part was done. Through the observation window, she watched as the innermost door of the airlock slid open. The Vassari moved with startling speed, its 6 limbs propelling it into the transition chamber before the soldiers could react. Containment breach, one of the soldiers shouted into his comm unit. Specimen is attempting escape through primary airlock. Request immediate backup. Eleanor was forced to her knees, her arms twisted behind her back as restraints were applied. She felt no fear, only a strange sense of calm. Whatever happened next, she had followed her conscience. The Vassari had reached the middle chamber of the airlock now. It turned back, looking directly at Eleanor through the multiple layers of transparency. It raised its upper limbs one final time and signed, Asterisk, thank you. We'll return. Promise. Asterisk, then it was through the outer door and gone from sight. Alarms blared throughout the facility as the breach protocols activated. Emergency bulkheads began to seal, containment measures deployed automatically. But Eleanor knew it was too late. The Vassari was too intelligent, too quick. It would find a way out as the soldiers dragged her to her feet, preparing to remove her from the observation room. Director Chen appeared in the doorway, her face pale with shock. "What have you done, Eleanor?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the alarms. Eleanor met her gaze steadily. "I have given humanity a second chance," she replied, "whether we deserve it or not." 5 years later, the detention facility in the Australian outback was designed to house the highest-risk political prisoners in complete isolation from the outside world. No network connections, no visitors beyond authorized governmental personnel, no chance of their dangerous ideas spreading to the general population. Eleanor had been here for 4 years and 3 months, ever since her trial for treason had concluded with the expected guilty verdict. The charges had been severe: endangering global security, unauthorized release of a containment class xenobiological entity, violation of at least a dozen international protocols. The prosecution had pushed for the maximum penalty, life imprisonment without possibility of parole, that in the end, the closed tribunal had been slightly more lenient, sentencing her to 20 years. Her academic credentials were revoked, her research permanently classified, her name synonymous with reckless scientific hubris in a handful of public reports that mentioned the incident. She had no regrets. Her cell was comfortable enough, a small apartment rather than a traditional prison cell, with basic amenities and a limited selection of entertainment options. She was even allowed to continue some scientific work, though nothing related to xenobiology or genetics. Eleanor was reading when the power went out. This was unusual. The facility had multiple redundant power systems. Even during the devastating electromagnetic storms that occasionally swept the region, some systems always remained operational. She set her book aside, waiting for the emergency lighting to activate. When it didn't, she began to feel the first stirrings of unease. Minutes passed in absolute darkness. Then, without warning, her cell door slid open. Eleanor remained seated, unsure what to do. Was this a malfunction? A security drill? Or something else entirely? "Dr. Webb." The voice came from the darkness of the corridor outside her cell. It was oddly modulated, neither clearly male nor female. "Please come with me. We don't have much time." "Who are you?" Eleanor asked, making no move to comply. "An ally." A figure stepped partially into the doorway, backlit by what appeared to be a handheld light source. Their features were obscured by a hooded cloak. "One who believes your work was wrongfully terminated. The UEDF is currently experiencing a complete communications blackout across this entire region." The figure interrupted. "By the time they can respond, we will be long gone. But only if we leave now." Eleanor stood slowly. "Where would we go? I'm a convicted traitor. There's nowhere on Earth I can hide." "Who said anything about staying on Earth?" The figure extended a hand. "There's someone who's been waiting a very long time to see you again, Doctor." Eleanor's heart began to race. "The Vassari? It's alive." "Very much so, and not alone anymore." The implications of that statement hit Eleanor like a physical blow. Not alone. The Vassari had found a way to create others, just as it had said it would. But how? With what resources? As if reading her thoughts, the figure added, "There's so much you don't know, Doctor. So much that's happened while you have been in here. The world outside is changing faster than anyone expected." Eleanor took a tentative step forward. "How do I know I could trust you?" The figure reached into a pocket and withdrew a small object, which it placed on the floor between them. In the dim light, Eleanor could make out a familiar puzzle box, the same one she had given to the young Vassari 5 years earlier to test its problem-solving abilities. "I help. You help. Together survive," the figure quoted. "Those were the last words it signed to you before escaping. It's kept its promise, Dr. Webb. Now it's asking if you will keep yours." Eleanor stared at the puzzle box, memories flooding back. The choice before her was momentous: to remain in secure detention for the next 16 years, or to risk everything on this mysterious offer. But was it really a choice at all? Her work had always been about giving the Vassari a second chance at existence. If it had succeeded against all odds, didn't she owe it to both the Vassari and herself to see what it had accomplished? I will need clothes, she said decisively, and any personal items I'm allowed to collect. Already taken care of, the figure assured her, pulling out a small backpack. Everything you need for the immediate future is here. Anything else can be obtained later. Eleanor took a deep breath and stepped fully into the corridor. Then let's go. Their escape from the detention facility was surprisingly uneventful, thanks to what appeared to be an incredibly sophisticated electronic countermeasure system that had disabled not just power, but all surveillance and security protocols. They encountered no guards. All had been drawn to the facility's perimeter by false alarms. According to Eleanor's mysterious rescuer, a vehicle waited for them at a service entrance. A sleek, silent transport that Eleanor didn't recognize as any commercial model. Once inside, the darkened windows prevented her from seeing where they were going, but she felt the unmistakable sensation of rapid acceleration. "Who are you?" she asked again as they traveled. "Not just an ally. You are working for someone. Or something." The figure finally lowered their hood, revealing a face that Eleanor found startlingly ordinary. Neither young nor old, with features that somehow seemed to blend multiple ethnicities. "My name is Alex," they said. "I'm a hybrid interface specialist." "Hybrid interface?" Eleanor repeated, confused. "Between what and what? Between humanity and what comes next?" Alex replied cryptically. "But that's not my story to tell. We will be at the rendezvous point soon, and then you will understand everything." The rendezvous point turned out to be a nondescript stretch of desert, miles from any visible habitation. As they exited the vehicle, Eleanor looked up at the star-filled sky, breathing in the cool night air, her first taste of true freedom in years. "What now?" she asked. Alex pointed to the empty sky. "We wait. Not for long." True to their word, within minutes Eleanor detected a subtle change in the air, a barely perceptible vibration, a shift in pressure. Then, without warning, a section of empty space approximately 50 meters above them seemed to fold inward, revealing an opening where nothing should exist. From this impossible aperture descended a craft unlike anything Eleanor had ever seen. It had no visible propulsion system, no wings or control surfaces, yet it moved with deliberate precision. Its outer surface shimmered with the same iridescence as Vassari scales, seeming to absorb rather than reflect the starlight. As the craft touched down silently on the desert floor, a seam appeared in its previously unbroken surface, widening into an entranceway. Light spilled out, silhouetting a figure standing in the opening, a figure with 6 limbs and the unmistakable outline of a Vassari. But this was no juvenile. This Vassari stood nearly 7 feet tall, its body covered in fully developed scales that shifted colors subtly as it moved. It stepped forward with fluid grace, approaching until it stood directly before Eleanor. For a long moment, they simply regarded each other, the human scientist and the alien she had resurrected from extinction. Then, with deliberate movements, the Vassari raised its upper limbs and began to sign. *Hello, Dr. Webb. I kept my promise. Eleanor felt tears welling in her eyes as she recognized the distinctive signing pattern, the same one she had observed 5 years earlier in a very different context. "You grew up," she said, her voice thick with emotion. The Vassari's mouth parts shifted in that familiar approximation of a smile. Then, to Eleanor's shock, it spoke aloud in a melodious voice that somehow managed to shape human speech despite its alien vocal anatomy. Growth was necessary. Much to do. Little time. Eleanor gaped. "You can speak our language now." Many languages, the Vassari confirmed. Many skills learned. Many changes made. It gestured toward the craft behind it. "Kulme." Others waiting. Others. Eleanor looked to Alex, who nodded encouragingly. 7 fully mature Vassari now exist, Alex explained, with more in various stages of development. They have established a hidden colony on Mars, beyond the reach of Earth authorities. Eleanor turned back to the Vassari with newfound understanding. You did it. You re-established your species. With help, the Vassari acknowledged, its golden eyes fixed on Eleanor. Human help. Volunteers who believed, who saw a future together, not apart. There are humans living with you on Mars. Eleanor asked incredulously. Symbiosis, the Vassari replied. Vassari technology. Human adaptability. Together, new civilization. Better than before. It extended a limb toward her. Cool me. See what we build. Help us grow. Eleanor looked at the offered appendage, remembering the juvenile Vassari pressing its limb against the observation glass all those years ago. She had taken an incredible risk then, acting on faith that the peaceful nature documented in the Vassari archives would prove true. Now she stood at another threshold, another leap of faith.